All right, now on to free will a little bit. In my opinion, we do not have objective free will, but we definitely do have subjective free will.
If it's subjective, is it free?
Yes, because it's free within the confines of the self, the individual. Yes.
Is it really?
It is really.
If it's confined, how is it free?
There are neurological pathways that allow the self to direct itself, to determine what it's going to do, to determine what type of input is going to allow in, to determine what kind of output is going to produce.
Okay, but that all being said, now when I deal with pathways, when we have closed systems that we're working with, there are only so many inputs and outputs, and you cannot achieve outputs based upon the definition of that system without a specific path from that input. Therefore, if you have inputs and outputs in this concept of free will, then that path is predetermined by composition of the brain.
You missed a word there. It's objectively predetermined.
Yes, it is objectively predetermined.
So I don't believe we have objective free will, but I do believe we have subjective free will, what transpires within one particular skull.
But to me, that's contradictory. To say that something within a closed, predetermined system is free.
It's not objectively free, but it's subjectively free.
But to me, what does that subjectively free mean?
It means that you have you have control. You have control over your mind.
No, I don't. I don't have control over my because my mind has been pre-wired.
How did you decide to say that?
Because my mind has been pre-wired in such a way that it determines. It's deterministic. I could not have said that because that's who I am.
Did you contribute to the wiring of your brain?
No, I didn't. That was determined.
You did. You subjectively contributed to the wiring of your brain.
No, I didn't.
Yes.
Nah.
Yeah, your sense of self contributed to your sense of self, and that's subjective free will.
No, I disagree.
Any contributions from the audience?
I think, I actually agree with Phil in the sense that Phil wanted to see which side I was on before.
All right, Sam's going to take over my argument for me. You can just take my chair.
Hi, I'm Sam.
He's Sam.
I'm just some guy. I don't know why I'm here.
And he eats green eggs and ham. Sorry.
Okay. So yeah, free will. I would have described it similar to Phil, but not exactly the same way. What I would have said is that it's what did you said? Objectively and subjectively. I would have said in absolute terms, no, we don't have free will, but in relative terms, we can. And by that way, I mean that we can fool ourselves into thinking that we do. However, when you consider the environment, I'm using kind of similar terms.
Yeah, but being fooled. I mean, pastors fool congregations all the time into believing that there's a God, according to the biblical definition of the term. But it doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make it true, and it doesn't even make it real. So simply because you're deluded into believing that you have free will does not in itself mean that you have free will, right?
Exactly. In absolute terms, it means that you don't, but in relative terms or in some fuzzy way, you actually can delude yourself into thinking that you do.
Yeah.
Because
I agree that you can be deluded into thinking you have free will, but that doesn't mean that subjective free will exists, unless you're defining subjective to mean that it's subject to your own opinion of what free will is.
You could say
is that what you mean?
Oh, that's the way Phil was saying.
Is that what you mean? Okay, then we agree. In that sense, we agree. But I thought you were saying that we have subjective free will in the sense that there is how do you say, there is a framework within in ourselves, within our brain, within our mind, that allows us to make decisions freely without being subjected to our composure, to our environment, to our educational upbringing.
Yeah.
That's what I thought you were defining. So
No, I think-
then I misunderstood you, and then we agree.
Yeah, I actually always thought we agreed on it. It was just we were all using different terms.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the point you just said about the environment. I mean, we're always subject to our environment without us necessarily knowing. I mean, look at hypnosis and things like that. Like people in the audience, if you ever watched Darren Brown makes people do all sorts of weird stuff. Even makes them do polygraph tests to see if they actually were faking it or playing along, and so on. And that's I mean, it's not objective proof, but it's pretty damn good evidence.
Yeah.
That,
So I guess the question that begs to be asked is, if there is no objective free will, then how can we hold individuals accountable for their decisions?
well, I think I would.
And that's kind of, I'm couching that question,
I would
deliberately.
I would crank it up a level and talk about it more in abstract terms, or I guess shift the discussion more into like social order. If you don't keep people accountable, and I guess it's actually you're manipulating, or I guess engineering the feedback systems. So I guess you're engineering the environment so that the right feedback comes out. I'm using your engineering terms now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I would answer that. So it's not a direct answer to the question as you worded it.
So, in other words, for some reason, we innately have a desire to further our species. And we have determined, or the evolutionary process has determined, that in order for us to optimize that process and for us to reach optimal solutions for society as a whole, it's necessary to hold individuals accountable for their behaviors, even if they are not necessarily personally responsible, in the sense that they have no control over the objective. You have no control over the deterministic qualities in your psyche or in your mind,
A particular domain.
to make decisions in a way that you would make decisions individually. So what that means is, based upon your mental composure, based upon your upbringing, your education, your level of knowledge, understanding consequences and whatnot, all of these things that you've been taught, and then also to what degree you have the ability to inhibit yourself from making improper decisions, or the least optimum decisions, then you have in no way. Society has determined that is sufficient enough to get the results that's necessary for society as a whole. So therefore, each individual, even if they may not have the ability to control their own decision-making process because of some mental problem, a lot of people with we've talked about this before, but with frontal lobe damage, they just have no inhibitions. And people with Tourette's syndrome or whatever, speak profanities, and there's all kinds of mental disorders that other individuals would look upon. And what do we do to those people, right? If someone loses their mind and commits murder, well, we still confine them. We may not confine them in the same way as we do, someone who is been determined, that they have, what is it, mens rea, or the mind to break the law. They intentionally broke the law. But we still as a society have a mechanism in place that will inhibit you externally if you can't do it internally. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I would say that it's engineering the feedback systems.
Yeah.
The feedback loops.
There are neurological pathways.
That's better now.
Don't poke your eye, man. Okay,
It's itchy.
Shut up.